Hey, I'm here today with Katherine Cornelison from the Creepy Americana podcast, and she is somewhat of an expert on the Lost Boys. How are you doing,
Somewhat.
Katherine? How
I'm
are you?
good. How about you?
I'm not doing bad. I'm not doing bad.
Good,
All
good.
right.
It's
Yeah. Hey, Katherine. So, tell me about this movie we're going to talk about today.
okay. We are talking about The Lost Boys from 1987.
Okay. Great movie. Great
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. I definitely have loved this movie for a really long time. It is definitely one of my favorite movies, one that I watch probably once a year. Do you hear that?
I hear that, but you can't do anything about it.
Okay.
Um, So it's really an 80s type glam movie, with the hair and the fashion and everything. It's stuck clearly in that era, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. This is like a timestamp of the 80s, and it's perfect too because it was partially filmed um, in California, Santa Cruz Boardwalk. It was filmed in the Santa Cruz Boardwalk, and so some of the scenes that are filmed there are just scenes of real people just kind of hanging out and dressing the way that they dressed at that time period. It's very much this time capsule.
They hired
Uh,
like 2,000 extras for those boardwalk scenes,
yeah,
locals.
it just feels. But you know what? That actually brings me to a really interesting point too, because our director Joel Schumacher, he started his career actually in film as like a costume designer and like a set director and stuff. So he very much had an eye for that sort of stuff. So
What
that
was
makes
going on?
perfect sense. Yeah.
So, so the real name of the town is Santa Cruz, right?
Santa
Santa
Cruz
Cruz
is where they filmed
film,
the boardwalk. Yeah.
and they changed it to Santa Carla so people wouldn't
Yeah.
think there were real vampires running around there.
Yeah, we don't need another war of the worlds situation, right?
All right. So you want to just start the story and tell us the story, and then I'll see what I can throw in to help it out.
Do you want me to tell you about actors or?
You tell me about whatever you want to tell me about. Who's Grandpa?
Okay, well, I wanted to start off a little bit with the
Okay.
cast.
Yeah.
So the cast. We definitely have some heavyweights and some lesser knowns. I will start off with the main character, who is Michael. He's played by Jason Patric. He only really had two acting credits before this movie, but he did go on to star in some relatively larger movies. In 1996, he was in Speed 2, Cruise Control with Sandra Bullock, and in 2010, he was in the movie The Losers, that actually has a lot of really big names in it, like Zoe Saldana, Idris Elba, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and Chris Evans. So
I saw that you put Speed 2 in your notes, and I just thought I wondered how that got above Geronimo, an American Legend, and the I forgot the name of it, the one where they were drug agents undercover.
I'm just telling
Yeah.
you, I mean, I guess I am a little bit younger. And so, like, to me, I see a movie like,
Jason Patric was in The Beast of War, which I reviewed not too long back.
aha,
Geronimo, an American Legend, Rush, that was the name of the movie.
okay. I don't know. I just, I like Sandra Bullock, and I know that like the first Speed movie was like a pretty big deal, and I just thought that the title was really funny. Speed
Yeah.
2, Cruise Control. Like that's very silly to me.
It was very silly, wasn't that? Because it was a boat. Everybody liked Sandra Bullock, but that was kind of a stupid movie.
Oh yeah, everyone likes Sandra Bullock movie. I just know it has a lot of like pretty big names.
Yeah.
So
Oh, you don't have to defend it if you like it. That's all there is to it. If you like it. So
I've
go
never
ahead.
seen it. I said, So next we have Michael's brother, Sam. He's the little brother. And I think other than Grandpa, he has some of the best lines in the whole movie, like these fun little one-liners. You
Right, he
know?
does.
Yeah.
This movie is go ahead.
He was played by Corey Haim, and Haim was definitely a pretty big star even before The Lost Boys. Though I really can't say that I've seen much else with him in it. I just know that he was like kind of a teen heartthrob and stuff at that time.
This movie started the two Coreys.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'll get into the other Corey a little bit later.
Yeah, I was going to say this movie is 34 years old.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it by now, we can expose the ending.
Well, no, I mean,
you've had 34 years.
No, I get that, but like also there are people who are younger who like don't know about it, or you know what I mean? Like there's people out there who don't know the ending of The Sixth Sense or Fight Club, or I think that like you can still preserve a little bit of mystery.
I don't try to preserve any mystery though. On this show, if you ever listen to any of these podcasts,
I
don't think you have.
I know. No, I understand. I'm just saying, like, for me personally, I would like maybe a little bit. I wouldn't want, it's like when you watch a trailer and all like the best lines are given away in the trailer, so then you go and watch the movie and it's like, well, everything was already in the trailer. Like, what was the point of me even watching the movie?
Yeah, right. Okay, so you got Michael and his brother Sam. What's going on with them?
I think that Sam's like a little bit queer coded. Like I don't know if you're like, so later on in the movie he's in the bathtub scene and he's like washing his hair and he's hanging out with his dog Nanook and he's like crooning along to this song I Ain't Got a Home by Clarence Frogman Henry, in which the singer says, I sing like a girl and I sing like a frog, as well as I ain't got a man, I'm a lonely girl. But it's a man singing. He has a very high voice, and he sounds like that, right?
Yeah.
Also, Sam's character has a poster of Rob Lowe hanging up in his room, and he's closely aligned with his mother. There's a scene earlier on in the movie where the mom comes in and his grandfather keeps giving him these taxidermied animals for some reason.
Right.
It's like a very weird aspect of the movie, and like the animals are kind of creepy, so he keeps putting them in the closet, and so he like gets in bed and his mom comes in to like talk to him or whatever, and he asks her to close the closet door, and she says something about like, one of the reasons that I think I divorced your father is because he never believed in the closet monster.
Okay. Well, I don't want to stick any pinholes in your bubble, but the picture of Rob Lowe was on the door because Joel Schumacher had just directed Rob Lowe in the previous film.
Yeah, but I mean, every piece of a set is very intentional. And like I said, Joel Schumacher also started his career doing set designs and doing costuming. So like I don't think that it's necessarily unintentional, but it's, like maybe there is that coincidence, but also like he could have decided not to have that poster there. He could have picked a different poster, or you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I'm looking for a piece of information. Keep talking.
Okay. And on top of that, Joel Schumacher himself was actually gay. I mean, he's dead now, but I think that does come out in his work a little bit, especially in this movie. I mean, Joel Schumacher, at least to people my age, is probably best known for those Batman movies in the 90s.
Okay.
Where Batman's costume has bat nips for some reason. Everyone's like, what? And so I think it's I think he did Batman Forever and Batman and Robin.
Okay.
You know those movies, right?
I know those movies. I'm not a big fan of them, but okay, yeah.
No, I don't
I know
think
exactly what you're talking.
anybody's. I'm not saying that anybody's a big fan of those movies. I think they're pretty well known for being stinkers. But
Yeah,
I'm also saying that like people my age, like that's probably his most known works by him for people my age.
yeah. You guys don't know St. Elmo's Fire with Rob Lowe in it.
Not really. I know the song St. Elmo's Fire.
It's from the movie.
I mean, I figured as much, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so all right. So what I meant, what was going on for you got into that thing? What I meant, what was going on in with Sam and Michael is why are they coming to this town?
Oh, well, I was going to get into that. I promise I'm getting there. So we're talking now about the mother. The mother is Lucy, who's played by the illustrious Dianne Wiest. Is it West or Wiest?
Least I think.
Wiest, okay, yeah, because I mean, it is spelled with an I, but anyway.
Is she the mother of that other Rachel Weisz?
That's Rachel Weisz. No, those
Oh,
are
okay.
two. Yeah. Rachel Weisz is from The Mummy. That's like the one that's like the best known, I think, for Rachel Weisz. No, I think they're probably close to the same age, honestly. But Dianne Wiest, to me, is just like this 90s mom figure. You know, she was in Edward Scissorhands in 1990 with Johnny Depp. She was in The Birdcage in 1996 with Nathan Lane and Robin Williams, and she was in Practical Magic as one of the aunts, also alongside Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman. So I just like, I don't know, she's like, she just has this really nice looking face. She's a really sweet lady, and she's always playing these like kind of dour kind of not dour, kind of dowdy, you know, late women, either like, you know, an aunt or a mom or something like that. So
she's the kind of woman that would be attracted if a flashy vampire gave her some attention.
Perhaps, especially because she just got divorced, which is why they're moving to California. So they are originally from Phoenix, and the mom just got divorced, and she's definitely having financial problems. So as a woman, I think probably in her 40s or so, she's having to move back in with her father in California. And her father is played by Barnard Hughes, who definitely has quite a few acting credits. Some of his more known ones would probably be Tron, 1982, Doc Hollywood with Michael J. Fox,
yep,
and Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit,
ooh,
1993.
Yeah, he plays a good old crabby guy.
Oh yeah, he's really good at it. Like he's some of the best stuff in that movie, you know, is where he's just kind of like yelling at his grandkids about, you know how it is around here, and I told you not to touch my food, and you know that rule about taking the car out and not filling it back up with gas. And they're like, no, Grandpa. And he's like, well, now you do.
Now you do.
He's
exactly.
Definitely one of the funniest characters in the movie for sure. I mean, and he delivers that last line of the movie so perfectly, so perfect. Ugh, it's just excellent. But I really, if you've never seen the movie, I really don't want to spoil that because I just think it's so good.
Well, I'll spoil it at the end, but okay. All right, so they moved to this new town, and what goes on there when they get there?
Okay, so we're introduced to them from like an aerial view as they're driving down this little highway on the coast, and the mom's listening to her like kind of older music and stuff, and she's like, I think it's Ray Charles and some others like that, and they're like, Mom, this sucks, you know? And she's like, okay. And so then as they're driving by, they see this billboard that says, you know, the name of the town, Santa Carla. And they're like, okay, Santa Carla. And then as they pass it, on the back side of the billboard, it says murder capital of the world. And as they pass the billboard, the music changes into People Are Strange by Echo and the Bunnymen.
Oh, I thought that was People Were Strange by the Doors.
It's Echo and the Bunnymen.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now you do.
They did a good cover.
It's a good little song. I really enjoy it. It's kind of, along with one other song in the movie, it's kind of the theme. There's like kind of that song, and then Cry Little Sister.
Okay.
The one that goes, thou shall not, whatever.
Oh, okay. Okay, I know which one you're talking about. The actual town where the film was the actual town where the film was shot had a string of murders in the 80s by some guys. I'm sorry, in the 70s, and they were trying to lose that image, and that's one reason they wanted them to change the name of the town.
Okay.
I don't think it worked. You know?
No, definitely not. But that, I mean, I guess California certainly did have a lot of murders in the 70s. I mean, you know, you got Ed Kemper, you got all kinds of folks that were out there, just, you know, murdering folks.
Some of those crazy Manson people were still hanging around at that time.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, some of them were not in jail at that point, you know, Squeaky Fromme and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, for
sure, it was a weird time.
Okay, so they go out. They're young. They're going out looking for adventure, and they end up on the boardwalk. And what kind of takes place there?
Actually, at the beginning, they're not just like hanging out. They're actually looking for jobs. So Michael and the mom are like asking around, and during that time, we're still in that montage of the boardwalk and like introducing people, and like you got these gutter punks, and you got like ex-hippies, and you got like, you know, drugged out people, and you got tourists and all that sort of stuff. And so it's still playing the Echo and the Bunnymen, and they're kind of asking for jobs. And at one point, Michael goes, you got a job here? And the guy goes, nothing legal. And so the mom's looking for a job too, and then they and the guy's back. I don't know what kind of mowing pattern this man has, but like, get away from me, go.
It's a something to do with recording, you know, because the jackass next door was using his spray compressor yesterday when I was trying to record.
I know. The second you hit that record button, it's like, oh, they're recording. It's time to make as much noise as possible.
Yes.
So.
Okay. So the so Diane, the mother, what's her name? Carol. Lucy goes into a video store, right?
We haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
So
we only have 6 hours to get this recorded.
Wow. Okay. Well, anyway, so they're looking for jobs, and they don't really come up with anything. So they go to their grandfather's house, and as they pull up, they see him laying on the porch, and they're like, oh my God, is he dead? You know, like the mom runs up to him and she's like, Dad. And Sam, the younger brother, goes, if he's dead, can we go back to Phoenix? And then the grandpa sits up and he goes, playing dead. But by the sound of it, doing a damn good job of it. So that's just kind of what you can expect from that character throughout the movie. He's just very silly and weird and quirky, and he's definitely kind of an old hippie guy. He wears like his little headband and stuff, and you know, he's got all kinds of like little wooden figurines and wind chimes and all kinds of stuff. And so they go into the house and they're just kind of looking around and checking things out, and he's like, let me give you some ground rules. So he's like, the second shelf is my shelf. You don't touch the shelf. It's got my double stuffed Oreos and my sodas or whatever, you know. Because he's like a little old fart, and he's like very, set in his ways. And then they also find his taxidermy lab or whatever,
Right.
and he's like, "Stay out of here." And they're like, "Okay." So right off the bat, very weird, very interesting, like set design and all that sort of stuff. So you can really see Schumacher's kind of expertise shining through there in that way.
Vision.
So before the end of that scene, though, he has this great line, and they're basically like, "Grandpa, did we really move to the murder capital of the world?" And he has this great line, and I don't know if you like want to insert it in there.
I don't
and, like,
remember it. Oh, what is the great line? I don't.
But he says, "Well, let me put it this way: if all the corpses buried around here were to stand up all at once, we'd have one hell of a population problem."
Okay, I remember that now.
Yeah. So then in the next scene, they go back to the boardwalk. And that's when we see them. They go to that little concert where the guy's all shirtless and muscly and oiled up, and he's playing the saxophone. And then
let's talk about that guy for a minute.
Yeah, let's talk about that guy.
Tell me some stuff about it.
He's the saxophonist for Tina Turner.
Yeah, he was. And also for Ringo Starr later on.
Oh, how about that? I didn't know that part. But it's kind of funny because up until like probably maybe 5 years ago, I never really realized that they weren't actually like watching him, like he wasn't actually there on set or whatever.
Right.
It was just like the way they edited it and stuff. And I was like, "Oh, he's not really there." And it was just like, "Oh, okay."
That's
they got little me. They tricked me.
Tim Capello is the guy's name, and
yeah,
I think everybody said, "I'm gonna get in shape just like that saxophone player."
Yeah, he's really buff, dude. Yeah. Like very buff. So so at this concert, this is actually where Michael first sees Star. And Star is played by, what is her name?
Jami Gertz.
Jami Gertz. Hold on, let me get Jami Gertz. And Jami Gertz was like pretty big in the 80s and stuff.
She was a big star.
I don't think she really went on to do too much else, but I do remember later on in life watching a movie called Less Than Zero, which had Robert Downey Jr. in it, and based on a Bret Easton Ellis book, which is the guy who wrote American Psycho.
Okay.
And she was in that movie, and I was like, "Oh, I know her," but I really haven't seen her in too much else beyond that. I think sometimes she plays like mom characters these days, but she's kind of much more of a background actor, I think. Right. But she was very big in the 80s.
She played the new girlfriend in Twister, and she was in 16 Candles.
She was in Twister, yeah. Yep, that's a good one.
And so she's a good actress. So he sees her because she's strikingly beautiful in her 80s fashion and hair.
Yes, which actually is very interesting. That role, the guy who played the main character, Joel Schumacher gave him like a lot of creative freedom because that was really the only way that Joel Schumacher could get him to play the part. So that guy really wanted like Meg Ryan to play the part. He wanted like a blonde, wayfish looking kind of person to play that role. But they got Jami Gertz instead. But I think she's good for the part. I think that she really did a good job, and I think she's very 80s. She's got her big curly dark hair, and her like striking eyes and stuff like that. So
black-haired vampires are better anyway. Now,
you think so?
Yeah, I think so. Blonde vampires, I don't know.
Well, what about Kiefer Sutherland's main character, main like vampire?
Doesn't he have that white?
It's
Isn't
like
that
bleach
white?
blonde. Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's not hardly
And then
blonde.
also Alex Winters of Bill and Ted fame. He's
Yes.
also one of the vampires in the crew, and he's got this big curly blonde hair.
Okay, I take it
In the
back then. Girl vampires have to have black hair.
Oh, I see. Okay, only girl vampires.
So, which main character were you talking about that he gave freedom to?
Oh, the guy who plays Michael, Patrick is the
Jason
last name.
Patric?
What is? Yeah, Jason Patric.
Jason Patric? You know, that is also Jackie Gleason's grandson.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you look at Hollywood, basically everybody in there is some kind of legacy. You
Yes.
know, everybody
That's why
has
we have to.
like
That's why we have
it's
to
all
bring English
nepotism.
actors over to do serious parts. Because everybody in America is on a legacy thing,
Yeah.
and
I
over in
mean,
England
like,
they're practicing on Shakespeare.
dude, like Drew Barrymore, she's like third generation. Her grandfather, I forget what his first name is. I know obviously it's Barrymore, but he was
Oh, Lionel Barrymore or John Barrymore, one of those.
I think it's John Barrymore. He was like out in Hollywood in like the original,
Right.
acting colony, like when it first moved out there in the 20s and 30s. He was, you know,
At least she can pull off an acting role and be funny,
yeah, she's
unlike,
good.
say, Dakota Johnson, who's third generation and horrible and everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen 50 Shades of Grey, and I don't think I've really seen anything else with her in it, so I can't really speak to that. But, yeah, I think that is probably the popular wisdom about her, is that she's, yeah, not the best.
Right.
But
Okay. So what goes next? What happens next?
so he's definitely very like interested in her, and she kind of leaves the concert and he starts following her, and Sam's like, what are you doing? You like her, don't you? What are you doing? And Michael's like, buzz off, go do something else. And I think during this time too, we see the mom, Lucy. She's still trying to find a job, and she sees this little kid who doesn't know where his mom is, and so she like helps him, and she like takes him inside this video store and saying like, hey, have you seen this kid's mom? And the video store owner, a man named Max, is very charmed by her and sees like this maternal instinct in her. And so she's like, I came here looking for a job. And he's like, well, I can give you a job. And so now Lucy has a job at the video store. So then we see the younger brother, Sam, walk into a comic book store. And the comic book store is run by these two brothers, Edgar and Alan Frog, which I always took them to be a reference to Edgar Allan Poe, right? Edgar and
Yes.
Allan.
Yes, definitely.
Edgar is played by Corey Feldman, who, like we were talking about earlier, is one of the the two Coreys, right? Corey Haim passed away in 2010, I believe, but Corey Feldman is very much still alive and somehow a cult leader. He's got this weird harem of like younger women who just like live at his house, and he kind of just like tells them what he wants them to do and how he wants them to look and stuff. It's very disconcerting.
He was married last time I saw anything about him.
Yeah, but I mean, he's also been like a very vocal person about kind of the pedophilia and stuff in Hollywood. So like, I'm certain that some of his eccentricities probably have something to do with, abuse suffered as a child.
No doubt about it. But at least it didn't drive him to kill himself with drugs like it did Corey Haim.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just about to say that, but yeah, I mean it's tough, so not to like go off too much and into too much of a tangent, but it does just sort of make me think about Britney Spears and about how like, that's something that's kind of topical right now, where she's kind of dealing with that conservatorship and stuff, and it's
Right.
all because of her, mental health stuff that she dealt with in the early mid 2000s, and it was all because like creepy pedophiles in the music industry were making this like 16, 17, 18-year-old girl wear like skin tight latex suits and stuff, and everyone was like, oh, she's a slut, she's a slut. And yeah, it's tough. So anyway, the brother is Alan, and I didn't even actually put his name because the actor is like such an unknown, and like I haven't seen him in anything else, so I don't know. Not to say he's
Well,
like an unimportant person.
which brother?
The other guy who's not Corey Feldman.
Oh, right. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I
The kind
didn't even put his name because I don't.
the kind of New Jersey kid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he reminds me a little bit of Rocky Balboa or whatever,
Jameson Newlander, whoever that is.
Yeah, like, sorry, dude. I'm sure you have a wonderful and fulfilling lifestyle and whatever, but I don't think you went on to do a whole lot. So, anyway, so it's the comic books are, wow, going way back to the story. The comic book store is run by these two brothers because their parents are these kind of like drugged out hippies who are like asleep and stuff, so they're not even paying any attention to the store and stuff. So it's basically run by these, two brothers. And he's like walking around, and they kind of come up to him, and they're like a little bit intimidating, and he's like, well, you can't put this Superman comic issue 300 with, issue 25 because, this thing hasn't
Red
been introduced
Kryptonite
yet.
hasn't been introduced yet.
Exactly. So it's like very silly. Like, he's obviously really nerdy, and they like pull out this comic book and they're like shoving it at him, right? And they're like, here, read this. And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm not really into horror comics. And they're like, think of it less as like a comic book and more of a survival guide. And he's like, okay. And they're like, yeah, just pray you never need to call us. And he's like, oh, I'll pray. I never need to call you. And then so he's got this comic book, and he takes it, and he leaves. Then we go back to David and Michael and Star, and they're talking on the boardwalk and whatever. And she introduces herself as Star, and he says, your parents too. And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, ex-hippies. I was this close to being called Moonbeam or Moonchild. And then they're interrupted by David and his merry band of motorcycle driving vampire dudes, And he's like, what are you doing, Star? And she's like, nothing.
Before you go any further, David is Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh,
you already said is Alex Winter was in there.
Yeah.
And then they had two other guys in the group.
And who I don't know who they are, and they aren't particularly famous still.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, speaking of like Hollywood legacies, Kiefer Sutherland's father is obviously Donald Sutherland, and Donald Sutherland is a very famous actor, Invasion of the Body Snatchers and all kinds of stuff. So he's a very big name in Hollywood, and Kiefer Sutherland, honestly, in his own right, has really made a name for himself. Obviously, he was really famous for the TV show 24, right?
Yes.
Which you and Mom watched.
Extensively, yes.
Extensively, yes. And then I think now he's in that show Designated Survivor or something. So
That's
he's
been
like,
canceled.
oh, okay, it got canceled. Well, I guess things are weird with COVID and all that stuff and what people want to watch, and I don't know. So
Anyway, yeah, he's a good actor. He's holding his own, other than what we said before about those other ones.
yeah, about legacies. No, I
Yes.
think he definitely holds his own. So yeah, he's the main vampire guy who's antagonistic towards Michael, and they're sort of competing for Star in a way, and they're kind of vaguely obsessed with themselves or with each other. It's this weird rival situation. So David and his group kind of show up on their motorbikes, and Star kind of gets taken away by David, right? So then we get this really weird chase scene where it's like the two of them on their bikes, and they're like their motorcycles, and they're just like racing, and it's like dark and it's foggy and you can't really see, and then all of a sudden you see that they're like racing towards this cliff edge, and it's like really intense, and they're racing, and it's kind of a game of chicken, and like who's gonna stop first, and then finally Michael stops first. Yeah. So he gets off the bike, and he's like, "You're trying to kill me," and he like punches him and says, "Just me and you, we're gonna fight right now." And he's like, "Nah, we're not gonna fight. Come hang out with us," So he takes Michael down into this like weird, I don't know what you would call it. I guess it's kind of a cave.
It's a hotel that's been wrecked, and it's now become a cave because it's been collapsed.
It's become a cave, right? Because sometime in the 1920s there was like a huge earthquake that like opened up and swallowed the hotel, and so now they kind of squat down in there.
And some of the original stuff from the boardwalk has been destroyed by another earthquake since then. Some of the stuff that was in the movie, yeah.
Oh. So anyway, they go down there, and they're checking out this old hotel and stuff, and they have like posters up, and there's like this poster of Jim Morrison in the back, and I don't know, I maybe I'm crazy, but I always kind of thought that the main character kind of looked like Jim Morrison. So I didn't know if like the director was kind of trying to make some sort of connection between the two, especially like the People Are Strange song is a cover of the Doors song, and that sort of stuff. So
he does kind of he favored Jim Morrison. I can see that too. I just noted something here that they said that the poster of the Jim Morrison's up there in the cave, but later when Laddie and Star were carried into the bedroom, there's a poster of Echo and the Bunnymen on the door.
Aha!
And see, all this time I thought that was just the Doors that sang that song.
There you go. See,
right.
It's all coming together. It's all full circle, right?
Yep.
So Star is there with them, and they're just kind of hanging out and being dudes, and they're like, let's eat. We got this Chinese food, right? So David's eating some like noodles, and then he kind of like holds it out and offers it to Michael, and Michael takes it and he starts eating it, and David's like, "It's worms," and he's like, "No, it's not," and then he looks down and it's worms, and so he drops it, and then the worms are wriggling and stuff, and then all the vampires are laughing, and Star's like, "Leave him alone," being like a weird kind of damsel in distress. It's very strange dynamic. And then he brings out the rice, and he's eating the rice, and he like tries to offer it to to Michael, and Michael's like, no, thank you. And he's like, come on, Michael. Can a billion Chinese people be wrong? Because, I don't know, rice and stuff. It's a very strange line. So then, Michael tries to eat it, and then of course it's like maggots or whatever, and he's like, whoa, it's disgusting, so he drops it, but then like he looks on the ground and it's just like rice. Right. And so he's like, what the heck, it's like this kind of weird game that they're playing. So then they bring out this bottle that looks like a bottle of wine, and they're like, they're kind of passing it around, and then they like pass it to Michael, and Star's like, don't drink it, it's blood. And Michael's like, yeah, sure. And then he, throws it back and drinks some of it. So it's kind of all part of that little game that they played with him, because, they're like, is it not? So he's like, well, they already played tricks on me, so it's probably not blood. So he drinks it. Of course it is. Of course it is, right?
Yeah.
So
let's stop right here and just go back to a complete horror thing. What is the effect of Michael drinking the blood with the vampires?
Well,
in old lore, there's no, in traditional lore, there's no drinking the vampire's blood like a swallow.
Sure. So, I mean, I read this book. It's a book that's called Vampires, Burial, and Death. And so it's a very like dry nonfiction book about basically the origin of vampires. And basically what it comes down to is medieval folks not really understanding human decomposition. And so a lot of times, they would see that like a grave was dug up, most likely by wolves or something, trying to eat the body. And so then they would sort of go through it and check the body, and like if the body had like blood, like red lips, they would be like, oh, this vampire's been sucking the blood of the people, but of course it's just the person got sick, they died, and then instead of they died, and then when the family members inevitably die, the villagers all are like, oh, that person who was a vampire came back and sucked the lives out of their family members. But, in reality, we know that it's, that person who was initially sick got the rest of the family sick, and then they died. Right. So it's very much this like whole thing about misunderstanding decomposition and dead bodies. So, you kind of have this sort of vampire, zombie, undead, revenant kind of thing in a lot of different cultures. So, but the majority of it kind of starts around like the 1500s, kind of that Middle Ages. So it's like post-Black Death. But there's still like these remnants of people getting sick, a lot of outbreaks of death and sickness that like they still really don't understand, because they don't really understand germ theory. We didn't understand germ theory until well into the 1800s,
Right. Yeah, but I guess what I understand that, but it's almost like you're implying that vampires aren't real, first off. And I was asking, like, is there anything in the traditional legends that has, I know they put it in Lestat interview with a vampire about, and some of that about drinking their blood to be turned into a vampire. But what about the drinking out of a bottle? Is there anything? Because he goes into the hallucination scene next.
Yes. So as far as I know, there isn't, because our kind of modern vampire thing sort of also springs out of zombies. So you have like the guy who wrote I Am Legend, which obviously was the source material for Omega Man and The Last Man on Earth, both movies that you reviewed, I think, like back in 2015 or something like that.
Very early on.
Very early on. that guy, I think his last name is Matheson.
Mm-hmm.
So he wrote I Am Legend, and that's kind of where a lot of our zombie and vampire stuff comes from, because the creatures in that book are really they're not described as either, right? But that source material is where we get Night of the Living Dead. So that's very formative for zombie movies and our zombie culture. Obviously, a very early vampire book is, Bram Stoker's Dracula. In that book, I don't think that there's much about how you become a vampire. It's just like the vampires kind of exist.
Well, I think they bite you 3 times and you become a vampire.
Yeah.
That's the 3 bites.
Yeah.
Which is just an inversion of the Christ, after he died, resurrected. Mm-hmm. It's the inverse myth of the 3 days.
Well, and that makes perfect sense, that it's like this kind of pseudo-Christian thing. I'm looking up really quick what the Interview with a Vampire. I'm trying to see when the book came out. Let's see. That's
81 or 82.
76. So Interview with a Vampire came out in 76. So I'm gonna assume that probably the vampire lore in The Lost Boys probably takes a lot from Anne Rice, because she was so formative. But like, the thing about Anne Rice's writing and her vampires in particular, they're very pseudo-sexual.
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
so it's not explicitly sexual, but there's definitely a lot of that. And I think there's also something kind of going on in this movie where there's, what is it called? It's called the indirect kiss, I think. So it's basically you do something where like you drink from a bottle and then you like pass it to somebody and that person drinks from it, and that's an indirect kiss. Or if you like eat the same food, or you like smoke the same cigarette, or you like light somebody's cigarette and something, it's kind of this literary way of kind of implying some sort of intimacy between people without actually like doing that. So I mean, obviously I'm reading a little bit into it, and it's, I am an English major, so like, what do you expect from me? But so we see this like very close up shot of Michael like drinking from the bottle, or not Michael, David drinking from the bottle, and it's like he like closes his eyes and he's like kind of in ecstasy as he's like drinking this blood. And so there is that kind of pseudo-sexual situation there, and then he passes it to David, and David drinks from it as well. I can't tell you exactly what Joel Schumacher was thinking when he directed it this way, when he when it happened this way, but that is certainly a way that it could be read.
Okay. So then they leave the cave, and that is when the railroad part happens, right?
Yes. So they're like, we're going to go do something fun. Michael, follow us. And so he's like, okay. And they are walking along the railroad tracks, and it's kind of this bridge railroad, sort of like in Stand By Me. Right. With the boys, they're like going across the bridge. And so Stand By Me came out before this movie, and also starred Kiefer Sutherland.
I was going to ask you that. Kiefer Sutherland was the older brother, right? One of the older.
Sure was. Yeah. So there's a little bit of a connection there. It could be a reference to that movie. It's very entirely possible. So they're crossing it, and then one by one the vampires start jumping down, and Michael's like, what the hell, what's going on, what are they doing? And then finally David goes last, and Michael's kind of left there standing by himself, and it's very clear that a train is coming, and it's shaking, and you hear the train horn going and all this stuff, and he's like, I don't know what to do, and so then he jumps too, and then we see that the vampires are just kind of holding on underneath the railroad as it's shaking, and like for some reason this is a fun thing for them. I really don't understand this scene, and I've never understood this scene. And then as the train is going by and it's shaking, he's like, his arms are getting weaker and he like can't pull himself up. And then the vampires start letting go and they just kind of drop down into the mist. And finally, when Michael lets go, he drops down into the mist. And then it's a very weird scene where he's like kind of doing almost this Matrix style, like arms flailing and his like leaning backwards, and he's kind of screaming, and he's falling down through the mist, and then he lands in his bed.
Wakes up in his bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And see, I think that was some kind of more of the mind. We drank the blood, and they got into his mind, and this was the first transitioning of him into the vampire.
Absolutely, because at that point, when he wakes up, it's like super late in the afternoon. He's been asleep all day, and like his mom's at work, and she called and she's like trying to talk to him. She's like, well, what's going on with you? Why are you asleep? And so I think also there's kind of this thing about this, like the son who's kind of disconnected with his mom. And he's, you know, the kind of teenager who's like, I'm too cool for you. I'm too cool for my mom. And, you know, so there's a little bit of that, a little bit of a theme of like, you know, transition, adolescence, you know, moving into kind of this new phase of life and sort of stuff like that. Because the little brother is still, like I said earlier, still kind of aligned with the mom. He's still very close to her. And so he's clearly like a younger child who's, you know, still really concerned about his mom. I mean, they're both concerned about their mom, but like, obviously Michael's like going through some stuff, you know, so he kind of can't totally focus on the mom the way that the younger brother can.
I've told you over and over not to hang out with those vampires. You'll get into trouble.
Exactly. So he's like hanging out with a bad crowd and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So what goes next?
So what
does Lucy go to visit her boss during the day?
Yeah, she's at work, and he kind of like asks her out on a date, you know, and she just got divorced, and she's kind of lonely, and you know, she's going through tough times herself, and so of course she's like, yeah, this like nice guy wants to go out on a date with me, and so that's really cool, and I kind of, you know, I want to go out on a date with him, so you guys just kind of hang out here and be good, and you know, don't get into too much trouble. I think that's when Michael wakes up on the ceiling. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that part.
He's like, something with his vampire stuff is like making him like float
in the air.
He's like floating. Yeah, he's like up on the ceiling. So he wakes up, he's like this, and then he kind of like rolls his face, and like, you know, he's like on the ceiling, and he's like freaking out. And no, that doesn't happen yet. I only know. Let's talk about the bathtub scene.
Well, let's before we get with Corey, with the brother.
Yeah.
Well, dude, sure, go ahead.
Well, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, not about the bathtubs.
Okay, so Corey finds out. No, sorry, his name is not Corey. Sam finds out that his brother is a vampire through a very interesting way. So Sam is just like at home, and he's like taking a bath, and he's washing his hair, and he's hanging out with his dog Nanook. And I did talk about this a little bit earlier, and all of a sudden Nanook is like freaking out, and he's like growling and stuff, and Michael like kind of bursts in the bathroom, and Nanook like jumps on him and bites him, and of course like Sam's freaked out and stuff, and he's like, what's going on, and so he sees blood on Michael's hand, and he's like, what did you do to my dog, you asshole? And he's like, it's my blood, he bit me. And he's like, why did my dog bite you? And then he sees that Michael is kind of translucent, not all the way in reflection, not all the way translucent, but partially. And he like, the gears click, this horror comic that he's been reading, and these like the weird Frog Brothers and all that stuff. He's like, oh my God, you're a vampire. And he has this great line. And if you want to put in the audio for that, I think that would be good too, so they can hear that, because it's just, what a great line.
And that line is?
I can't believe it. My own brother, a goddamn shit-sucking vampire.
Yeah. And it's somewhere in the phrase is used, vamping out. And that was the first time it was ever used, or vamp out. In this movie was the origin of that phrase.
Yeah. I think it was the Frog Brothers. They say something like, just so you know, if you vamp out in any way, we will not hesitate to stake you.
Okay. So he does the Sam, the little brother, he contacts the Frog Brothers, who load up with the holy water and garlic and come over, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, he contacts, I don't remember, because there was that scene. And then another scene where Michael's asleep, and he wakes up, and he's on the ceiling, like I said. And he's like floating around. And Sam freaks out, and he like shuts himself in his room, and then like Michael's outside the window, and he's like, "Help me, bro! Like help me!" And Sam calls his mom, who's on a date, and he's like screaming. He's like, she's coming to get me!" So then the mom like runs out of the restaurant and like tries to come home, because like she's freaked out because her son is like calling her screaming. And so then Sam calls the Frog Brothers, and he's like, what do I do? And they're like, oh, he's obviously a vampire, so you got to kill him. And he's like, no, I can't do that. There has to be some other option. And they're like, well, if he's only partially a vampire, he's not a full vampire, he hasn't fed on any human blood yet, then if we kill the head vampire, then he'll stop being a vampire.
Right.
So that's kind of the conflict there. That's like kind of how they are going about solving the rest of this problem. The rest of the movie is all about figuring out the head vampire.
So we're over an hour, so let's just sum it up. So let's say Michael grabs Star and Laddie, a little boy, and brings him back.
We didn't even talk about Laddie, but yeah, he's like a little half vampire too.
Yeah, a little Eddie Munster. Vampire lady. Anyway, so he brings them back to the house to protect them, and the Frog Brothers are coming, and they set up a defense. So it's up to the 3 younger boys and the dog, because Grandpa's out on his date and the mother's not there, and the vampires are coming towards the house. So it's the big tension scene build up.
Yes, they like fortify the house. They got all their holy water. They got garlic in the bathtub. Like they're doing the whole thing. And so they have a showdown because the vampires come in the house and they're like, squirting the holy water and, all this sort of stuff. And you have these great kill scenes that are like, so I think the kill scenes are definitely worth just watching. Even like I don't want to describe them too much because I think it's worth watching. Or like
Death by Stereo.
Yes, Death by Stereo, another great line by Sam. And then like when the pipes all explode and stuff with the blood and everything, it's great. It's super worth watching. And then you have the final showdown between Michael and David. and they're like flying around the ceiling, and they're like fighting, and you tried to make me a killer. I tried to make you immortal.
And there's all kinds of animal heads, mounted animal heads with horns. So you know somebody's going to end up on those horns eventually.
Oh, absolutely. Because, the grandfather is a weird taxidermist for some reason. And, so finally, Michael is triumphant when he slams David into some horns in the grandfather's taxidermy lab or whatever. But it's super weird because Michael and Star and Laddie all seem to still be vampires. Yeah, they didn't change back.
It's like they haven't killed the head vampire yet.
It's like they haven't killed the head vampire. What's up with that? So then Max shows up. Max is the mom's kind of love interest boyfriend guy who they've gone on a couple dates and stuff. And he's like, silly boy, you'd never invite a vampire into your house. And then he goes all in. And then you find out why the name of this movie is The Lost Boys. It's because Max is kind of the Peter Pan, and the other vampires are, the Lost Boys, this group that never grows old, they never die, they want to remain kids forever. And Max wanted a Wendy for his
little family.
The Lost Boys, that's right.
Right.
But now all the vampires are dead, but Max still wants Lucy and his family and stuff, and he wants the boys to be in there too. Should we spoil how it ends?
Sure, we should. We're gonna say there are spoilers. If you want to listen past here, there are spoilers.
Okay. Yes. All right. We'll say it that way. So you hear this, and then all of a sudden, the grandfather's car drives right through the house, and the stakes that he kind of set up outside the house fly in through and just stab Max right in the stomach, and of course he dies. And thank God, Michael and Star and Laddie are all back to normal now because they finally really killed the head vampire. And everybody's all covered in soot and it's dirty and all this sort of stuff. And then the grandpa just kind of wanders in the house, and it's dark, and he just walks over to the kitchen, and he opens the fridge door, and there's just kind of a little bit of light on Michael and Sam and Lucy as they kind of follow the grandfather into the kitchen. And he gets out himself a little soda, and he drinks a little drink, and he goes, one thing I never could stand about living in Santa Carla is all the damn vampires.
The damn vampires.
And then it goes dark, and then it starts playing and People Are Strange.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Great movie. So basically, I guess Michael inherits, I would have to say, Michael inherits a family. He gets Star and Laddie. He's stuck with that kid.
I mean, yeah, I guess so. Because the kid is missing and stuff. I mean, he must have a family, right?
I don't know. Maybe they killed his parents.
Maybe they did, but all I know is that there is a shot that I do think is really interesting, and also definitely says something about kind of the culture of the 80s. Is you see the child, the missing poster on a milk carton that's in their house, right? So right. I mean that time period is really when that children on milk carton thing started popping up, right? Because there was this whole thing about stranger danger and kids being kidnapped, right? You got John Walsh's kid who was kidnapped from the Sears in South Florida, and you got Johnny Gosh who was kidnapped while he was doing a paper route and all that stuff. So it was very much like a a thing about, missing kids and stranger danger and stuff at that time period.
I guess that's
So
why y'all couldn't play outside.
absolutely. In the 90s,
Yeah.
absolutely, kids were not playing outside. You couldn't just go down the street and hang out with you had to stay in your yard. You couldn't be unwatched for too long.
Tough
For
life.
sure.
Tough life.
I know.
All right. So what do you think
hard.
this movie rates in the vampire pantheon?
I mean, for me personally, I think it was a very formative movie. Again, it's something that I watch probably once a year, sometimes maybe more, just depending on the year, I think. But everybody who I've ever had watch it has always really enjoyed it. I mean, it's a little bit silly, and it has some weird dialogue and stuff like that, but it's just a super fun movie. And personally, I think it rates really high up there. I certainly watched it. I would watch this over, Interview with a Vampire and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that's it's up there with Dracula and the Spanish Dracula. It's in that range,
For you, personally.
It's up there in the top 5.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. And I mean, I think that I think that it's been influential in vampire media in general, I think, because this is kind of silly, but how in the Twilight books and stuff, everyone's always like, haha, the vampire's skin is all sparkly or whatever,
Right.
like, oh, sparkly vampires, but there's actually a scene in The Lost Boys where they stake a vampire and the blood drips down on them, and they go out into the sunshine and the blood is all glittery.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just a coincidence, but I always did think that was interesting.
That is interesting.
I was a 13-year-old girl once. I certainly read all those vampire books, the Twilight books, but I read other ones too. I was 8th grade, I had a super vampire phase. I would go to the public library and just go into the young kids section or whatever, where the Goosebumps and stuff all were, and just look for vampire books. So.
All right. Well, look, I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
And, it's going to take me a while to edit it because it's pretty long, but
Sorry.
we'll definitely do it. So, okay, I'm going to stop there. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. And you want to say the name of your show again, please?
Creepy Americana.
Creepy Americana, and that's a podcast. You can get it at Apple and wherever other podcasts are hosted, right?
Definitely Apple and Google Play and that sort of stuff. So yeah, we're around.